What's going on, guys? Welcome to Everything Always. My name is Michael Roman, aka All Fires. Now, in case you somehow missed it, last year, right after the Fantastic Four dropped, Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige sat down at their Burbank headquarters in lieu of them not doing a huge presentation at San Diego Comic-Con and basically talked about the same sort of stuff that they would normally present. And during that meeting, he revealed that they have a 5-year plan after Avengers Secret Wars ends in December of 2027 that'll take them through 2028 all the way to 2032 for the next saga, presumably, where we'll now get Avengers 7 and 8. Now, there have been some rumors that the Russos may end up sticking around after Avengers Secret Wars, and while not direct films during the Mutant saga, basically oversee it, and I think that's pretty in line with them coming back to do the next Avengers films and maybe having a hand in how they lead up to it, so they don't have to walk into the mess they just did with the end of the Multiverse saga. And as we've been talking about what films may comprise the next couple of phases that will take up these next 5 years, we've basically split them into two categories. Films we already know for sure that they're making, like Black Panther 3 and the X-Men reboot, and then films that we can reasonably assume are going to get the next installments for their franchise, films like Shang-Chi 2, and of course Fantastic Four 2. And that's where we pick up today with a huge industry insider bombshell, and coming from a trusted source that Marvel Studios may be looking to go in a totally different direction with the next installment for the Fantastic Four franchise, and including replacing the director. We're going to talk about exactly what was said and then why this makes sense from a logical standpoint, and no, it doesn't have anything to do with the director himself getting fired or anything like that, or even maybe the lackluster box office, the less than anticipated or maybe less than hoped for box office for the first installment, rather a completely logical reason that has to do with what's going on in canon and in world with the 616 or whatever we'll end up calling it post Avengers Secret Wars. We're breaking it all down, Fantastic Four 2 and a new director, but first, if you could grab the subscribe button. Thanks to everyone who's been subbing lately and helped grow the channel. If you haven't already and you like Marvel content, I would just kindly invite you to do so. We do Marvel content every day. It's the best way to support us, plus it'll enter you for the giveaways. Also, if you're in the Atlanta area at the end of the month, All Fires will be playing at the Masquerade in downtown Atlanta. May 30th, we're opening up for Tough Turf and our friends Night. They're coming through on tour. If you want to grab tickets, we'll leave a link down in the description and comments. Tickets are super limited. To those of you who've already let me know you're coming, I'll see you there. To the rest of you, grab your tickets early. Now let's go ahead and jump into the video. Okay, so this is the latest according to industry insider Jeff Snyder over on the Hot Mic podcast alongside John Roca. This broke yesterday, and in case you're not familiar with that name, I know diehards of the channel will know exactly who this is. This is the guy who over the last 2 or 3 years has been absolutely on fire with scoops for the MCU. He nailed Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom months prior to that being confirmed, has had a ton of updates confirmed for Spider-Man Brand New Day, has a ton of X-Men casting inklings that we'll have to see if they come true. But in the meantime, he went ahead and said this about Fantastic Four 2. He knows he initially scooped that Matt Shakman would be back in the last 6 months to a year following Fantastic Four coming out at the box office, that he would come back and direct the sequel. But he is now hearing that Matt Shakman will not be back definitively to direct the Fantastic Four sequel, and went on to hint that's why we got an announcement days ago that Matt Shakman would actually be directing the very next Planet of the Apes film. That announcement actually flew under my radar. I've been tapped out of the Planet of the Apes franchise for a while. That being said, it may have something to do with he was waiting to see what happens with the Fantastic Four and then went ahead and took this film because he won't be doing Fantastic Four 2. John Roca, the co-host on that podcast, then went on to prod, hey, is this what's going on here? Is this sort of a thing where he's getting fired by the studio, or, and then to which Jeff Snyder replied, well, it's more maybe of a scheduling thing. He's taking Planet of the Apes, but surely Matt Shakman's preference would have definitely been to come back for Fantastic Four 2, and so just speculation, but we have to think here this may be a decision on the side of the studio. But not because of what Matt Shakman did in Fantastic Four 1. My theory here is that they're going in a different direction with the director because this is going to be a totally different kind of film. Look at Matt Shakman's 2 installments in the MCU, WandaVision and Fantastic Four, where in both projects and during production there was a visual aesthetic for nostalgia from previous decades that was a huge element for the production and what those projects ended up being. Now look at Fantastic Four 2 in a post-Avengers Secret Wars world where presumably they'll be in the main timeline, and this won't be a period piece at all. It'll be a modern MCU film set in the current time. What's more, we've heard rumors past this being a mutant saga, but that it might focus on the cosmic side and the space side, and that Annihilus, who was the rumored villain to be played by Henry Cavill in the now cancelled Nova TV show, still may end up being the villain somewhere down the road, whether it's played by Cavill or not. And if he is the villain, you could see that this next Fantastic Four film might focus on him specifically and be basically a space film. Now, it doesn't mean that Matt Shakman couldn't have taken the reins on a film like that. And I know some people are going to point to the box office for the Fantastic Four and say this must be the culprit. And I do have to admit that when I looked up all of the box office takes and during the Multiverse saga, I was surprised to see how low Fantastic Four First Steps was. On the total list of 1 through 14, the Fantastic Four First Steps came in at number 7, basically in the middle of the pack with $511 million as the worldwide gross. It came in behind Thor: Love and Thunder, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, Doctor Strange: The Multiverse of Madness, Deadpool and Wolverine, and Spider-Man: No Way Home. Now, obviously, you could assume that a couple of those on the list, especially the top two, were going to beat a Fantastic Four film just based on what they were and the popularity of Spider-Man, Deadpool, and Wolverine in and of the publishing itself. But Marvel Studios made a huge deal of bringing the first family home, having them under one roof, and you have to admit there were probably sort of expectations that they could push that towards a billion-dollar franchise. If anything, it proved that a Fantastic Four title can never ever be considered anywhere near an Avengers title, and while I don't quite think that was the plan, you still have to admit Marvel Studios was hoping that it would be a little more financially successful, regardless of the missteps in the current state of the Multiverse saga when that film was released. So, I think that there will be some fair speculation about whether or not Marvel Studios thought changing the director and the writers, making an overhaul of what that franchise is, was probably a good idea in the wake of the box office take being, again, what I think is probably very disappointing for them. That being said, because it's going to be a completely different kind of film anyway, maybe there's a world where Matt Shakman didn't quite connect with the project or want to go in a different direction with what he was doing. Maybe there's a world where they talked about it being open-ended, and because it wasn't a period piece, not working together on the next film, or maybe Marvel Studios was point blank like, hey, you know what, we're going to go in a different direction. Regardless, this is not a death knell for a Marvel franchise, and in fact, Marvel Studios has had franchises in the past where a change of director was actually a really good thing. Here's looking at Captain America. Not that the first Avenger wasn't a great film, but when the Russos took over with Winter Soldier, it's regarded as one of the best films. I think there's a world where some franchises, like say the Guardians of the Galaxy, well, it would be hard to have a Guardians movie without James Gunn directing it. But there are other franchises and other teams and characters where I think that it could be cool to experiment with new directors, and in fact, even though I think Deadpool, the next installment, will probably be directed by Sean Levy, I could just as easily see it being directed by someone else and still be an amazing film. I think that even with the success of the Spider-Man franchise in the MCU as it is under John Watts, that Destin Daniel Cretton is obviously going to rise to that occasion, and probably if he murders this one, they're going to let him stay on and do the next two, and it'll be interesting to see what direction Marvel Studios wants to go. But there is one name that I can certainly put on the top of the list who has indicated they want to shoot a Fantastic Four movie for Marvel that I am hoping they don't go with, and that's Peyton Reed. Look, this is definitely going to be the op-ed part of this video, and this is completely opinion-based, but I want to make a point here. Marvel Studios has maintained, Kevin Feige in that very same meeting in Burbank said, look, we're keeping our system down, this plussing movies as they call it, which is really just them on set, rewriting, over-editing. Sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't. And with the Russos, they're directors in their own right who know how to work in the Marvel machine. But what happened with Peyton Reed as he directed the 3 Ant-Man films, 1 and 2 I think are great movies. I love the first Ant-Man film. Maybe the second one isn't quite as good, but that third Ant-Man film was a mess, where it was very clear that Peyton Reed had sort of lost control as a director. It's completely over-edited, it's completely rewritten, the dialogue doesn't make sense in the third act because they omitted the scenes that it tied to in the second act, and they even had to stitch together still frames where they didn't have enough principal photography. Look, whatever happened there, you can probably easily say it's on Marvel Studios' shoulders. The rewriting, the over-editing, the quote-unquote plussing, it doesn't always work, and most times it doesn't, to have too many cooks in the kitchen. The point I'm trying to underline, though, is even if it wasn't Peyton Reed's fault, it's pretty clear that he sort of lost control and that the system, the machine that you have to work in for Marvel, sort of ran him over on that film. I don't know if he'll do another Marvel film. I don't think that there will be another Ant-Man and Ant-Man 4. In fact, I would put Ant-Man on a short list of characters that may not survive Doomsday or Avengers Secret Wars. But what I do know is that with his fumbling of Quantumania, the machine sort of sucked him in, and I do not want to see him in the same position with all of the rewriting and the over-editing for a Fantastic Four movie. They need a director who can come in and still have his vision and his voice heard, the same way we expect the Russos to work in the Marvel machine and do just that with these two movies. Fantastic Four 2 needs to be better than Fantastic Four 1. It needs to embrace the modern feel of what's going on in the MCU, and it needs to have some real stakes, because yes, they tried to do a thing with putting it in a retro-futuristic world, but between that and Galactus not being in our own timeline and the Shalabal Silver Surfer instead of the Norn Rad that we still all are patiently waiting to join the MCU, I just think that now more than ever is where that franchise needs to pivot into a stronger voice, a better movie, new writers and a new director. It'll be interesting to see who Marvel decides to go with, and for that film, maybe they already have someone lined up. But here's the huge takeaway. Okay, they've spent 2.5 years or 3 total years as runway in developing the next X-Men film. Ryan Coogler's been working on the script and publicly acknowledging it for Black Panther 3 for over a year, and even Ryan Reynolds has said he's already working on the next installment for Deadpool, which Jeff Snyder, the same industry insider, indicated might actually lead off the next saga instead of the X-Men reboot. If you missed our film on that, we'll talk more about that later. Just hey, Deadpool and Wolverine is a known commodity. It is the X-Men reboot, and it might be fresh to come out with an R-rated film that summer that has some comedy in it, after we are pretty sure we are going into the 2 most serious Avengers films of all time in Doomsday and Avengers Secret Wars. That all being said, if this stuff is now being decided now, who's going to direct this next film? Is it Matt Shakman? Or if they don't know who's going to direct the next one, maybe Matt Shakman being out is the first step in that, pun totally intended. That means that they are starting the earliest stages of pre-production on Fantastic Four 2. With years runway, you could see this movie being aimed for a 2030 or 2031, leading into the end of the next saga. And so those stakes I was just alluding to that need to be a part of this film, regardless of who writes it and who directs it, well, it sounds like Marvel Studios is lining it up for just that. You guys let me know though, on a very short list of directors, knowing that Marvel Studios doesn't always land big names, knowing that sometimes they go with rather unknowns that will basically allow them to do movie by committee, who do you think that they should get to direct the next Fantastic Four film? Because to be honest, other than knowing that I didn't want Peyton Reed to do it, I actually couldn't come up with a name of any of the directors in the current landscape that I would want to see tackle the Fantastic Four film, just knowing what kind of movie it has to be. So I'm all ears. Who do you want to have take the helm on the next Fantastic Four film? You guys let me know down below quickly. Let's get into the giveaway stuff. All right, all you got to do, be a sub, leave a comment, because it's truly random. The more videos you comment on, the better chance you have of winning our giveaways. Also hit the notification bell with all notifications turned on. If you want to keep up with the videos, especially headed into Spider-Man and Avengers Doomsday, we post every day. We keep you up to date. Also, if you like today's video, hit the like button. My name's Michael Roman. Find me on Instagram and Twitter at IamFires. You can also find me on all other platforms with original music under the name All Fires. Again, if you're in the Atlanta area, we'll be live at the Masquerade on May 30th, opening up for Tough Turf at night. Grab tickets down in the link in the description and comments. See you at the show. To the rest of you, I'll see you in the next video. Peace.